Let me invite you to take out your message guide this morning and follow along with us. Today is a Sunday that many churches set aside to consider the importance of life. It falls on the calendar, connects with the anniversary of the Roe versus Wade decision. So it's an opportunity for us to explore and to join others as we think about some things concerning the celebration of life today. It also kind of fits in its connection. Tomorrow, many of you will have off because of Martin Luther King Day. And the celebration of life in many senses is kind of anchored in the whole concept of justice, of the concept of dignity, the dignity of all lives. And so you're going to hear some of these concepts throughout the message this morning as we celebrate the sanctity of life, the celebration of all life. And so as I get started today, last year we took an opportunity and we did an Honoring Life Sunday, and are doing it this year, and each year I want to do it from a kind of a good, little different perspective. But as we consider just the whole issue this morning as it relates to Roe versus Wade, just the whole issue of abortion or being pro-life, that whole concept, I just want to be clear that it isn't and it shouldn't be isolated only to issues surrounding abortion. That being pro-life really reflects the theology. It reflects, pardon me, a worldview that says all of life is important, that all of life has value, that all of life has dignity from conception to the grave. The older I get, the closer I get to the grave, Lord, if the Lord tarries. And the more I hope life has dignity, the older I get. And had a conversation some time ago with an individual, and we were just reflecting on some things, and I realized that all of a sudden I'm talking about things that old people talk about. We were talking about medication, we were talking about all of those kinds of things, and we talked about it from a ministry perspective, the idea that there are a lot of people out there who are older who deal with these things as a reality. But there are many people who are out there who deal with these things as a potentiality. And the stresses that are on people emotionally and, with regard to dealing with, one day I'm not going to be able to do that. I'm not going to be able to go out and shovel the driveway and clean off the car. That's going to be a little bit beyond what I can manage. And so we want to talk this morning about the dignity, but just from the concept of this whole issue of sanctity of life and being pro-life, from the idea that it represents the value of all life, not just the unborn. And so I want to look at two classic passages today with regard to this whole issue, two classic passages of Scripture. And so here's kind of where we're going to go. We're going to start and look at these passages of Scripture and talk about the source of life and the value, the vision that God has for life. And the second, I want to talk, growing out of that, about the issue of the sanctity of life and some of the things that are implied from those verses. And then last, I just want to kind of summarize just some thoughts and kind of, if you would, put a bow on it and bring it all together. But, as we do that, particularly focusing on Psalm 8, Psalm 139, and these thoughts, the elephant in the room, proverbially speaking, is that many people get nervous when these kinds of things get talked about because it gets kind of close to home. For some of you, and I am not naive with regard to the statistics that float around, there may be women who have gone through abortions here this morning. There may be men who have encouraged a spouse or encouraged a girlfriend to do that. Let's just be upfront that for some people this is a very sensitive nerve. And it is an issue that is hard to deal with. There's a lot of shame with regard to this. and again, for various reasons, but I don't want to mince words this morning. I want to be clear about what Scripture says. I think I would be wrong to back away from saying something because someone perhaps has had that experience. In the same vein, I want to say this, and I want to make this absolutely and perfectly clear, that there is no sin that any of us has ever committed that God is not able to forgive. That there is no sin that God does not forgive, except rejecting His Son Christ. And so Calvary is greater than any of those experiences we may have faced or those decisions that we have made in walking the journey of life. God's grace and forgiveness is there, and I want you to be aware of that. And if you have taken that to Him and have released that to Him, then you need to know that that is no longer an issue for you. And that my encouragement for you would be to live in light of the hope that Christ gives, and to not let Satan steal that hope and that joy from you. But one of the things as we look at this morning is that the whole issue of abortion, the whole issue of that issue in particular has seen a number of hopeful things happen over the years. It has really been in a decreasing trend, this particular issue, since approximately 1990, which was kind of the apex, registered, at least from what statistics say, 1.6 million conservatively abortions, and now it's just about 1 million. So if you would, things are trending in the right direction, but that would not be enough. And we should continue to work and to think and to pray that things will turn around. But in thinking that and in praying in that way, we need to just be absolutely honest and not expect Washington or legislators or whatever to really be able to fix that, because abortion and the issue of dignity of life is a moral issue. It is not necessarily a legislative issue. If the morality in the hearts of people were different, it wouldn't make a difference if it was legal or not. It wouldn't happen. And so really, as a church and as people who are followers of Christ and seeking to align our lives in keeping with what He would teach, practically speaking, our government could allow a whole lot of different things other than that, and they just wouldn't be embraced simply because we are a God-fearing, moral, and Christ-like people. But that is not the case. And so our hope cannot be in government or simply legislature. Our hope is in Christ for things to change. And we need to be doing our part in sharing godly worldviews and lives that honor Him to work on those things. So where do we want to go today? Let's get on the move here. So the first is this. I want us to see our transforming truth, and it is this, that all of life is sacred. All of life is sacred. That whether it is the unborn life or whether it is the life that has been born and been around and walked and turned gray, that life is sacred too. And that God views life as sacred, as having dignity. And we really are not in a position, being who we are, being the creation, to determine what lives do and do not have value, which ones are or are not sacred. No one has the right to determine that. God determines that. We are not in a position to determine whether or not a particular life will thrive or should die. It's not a decision that's left in our hands. In fact, contrary, it is the other way. And so the Bible is clear that we're stewards of life. We are to be the ones who care for it. We are not its creators, and God is the one who initiates it, while we may carry it. He is the one who sends life, while we may be the ones who bear life. And so this basis of life, what is it? What is the source of this life? Our first point this morning, as we unpack this and go, the Bible is really about life from Genesis to Revelation. And so as we look at the scriptures, somewhat towards the middle, we find Psalm 8, Psalm 139, and the things that it teaches us with regard to what God has to say about it. So the source of life, if you have a Bible, let me invite you to turn to Psalm 8. It's page 483, if you'd like to follow along using the Pew Bible. And maybe you're here this morning and you don't have a Bible of your own. There are Bibles out in the Commons for you at the Welcome Center, and we invite you to grab one of those and take it with you. But here in Psalm 8, page 483, again, David really is trying to land and bring the plane down, land the plane on describing the value of life. And he does so in verses 3 through 6. So notice first, if you would with me, God's value of life. And really, if you would, the first part of this value has to do with the idea that we are the focus of his attention. We know that we are valuable because God focuses his attention on us. We see that in verses 3 and 4. When I considered your heavens, the works of your fingers, the moon and the stars, which you have ordained, what is man that you are, and then he says, mindful of him, and the Son of Man that you visit him. It's really kind of a poetic statement that David offers here with regard to God's valuing us and his focus on us. He says, I stand back, he says, and I look, and it was a great drive this morning in from Templeton, because the sun is coming out, and there's the beauty of the snow on the trees, and it was just, at one point, you ever see those signs on Route 2 that say, what is it, glare? Solar flares, or whatever, and you're like, oh man, what in the world is going on here? She's solar flares right up the middle of the road. But it was like the sun was coming out and everything, and it was beautiful. It was beautiful. And so he says, I stand back and I look at the beauty of what God has created. He says, I take a moment to observe the things around me that God has made. He says, I see the stars and I see the moon. I see the massive, just all that you have made, the mountains, these incredible things. And then he says, what is man? What am I compared to all of those things that you have made? And in fact, if you unpack this, the Hebrew word there, where he says, what is man? The idea here is, what is frail man? What is frail man? What is the easily broken man? What is the fall apart guy that I am? What is it about me that you focus your attention on me and not all of those other things that I notice and I see around me? There's all of this display of your glory, God, and yet you are mindful of me. The idea of being mindful is not just simply remembering, if you will. It's the idea here that God's mind is full of him. Full of him. Have you ever had something enter your mind and you just can't shake it? And you're like, it just consumes your thoughts moment by moment by moment, hour by hour, day by day. That's the words that are used here to describe how God focuses on us. That his mind is on this frail man continually, fully. Without a loss of focus, he is looking and mindful of you. We have God's undivided and focused attention and care from him. Perhaps the most amazing picture of that is that he would send his son to die on the cross for us. That's how much he reveres. That's how much he looks at and loves and cares for his creation. So the first thing we see is that we are the focus of that, but then the second is that we're the apex of it. We're the apex. We're the top. We're the top part of that creation. And we see that in verse 5. For you have made him a little lower than the angels, and you have crowned him with glory and honor. God's crowned human beings, you and I, with glory and honor. There's nothing that comes close to us. He's given us the attributes of dignity. He has created us in his image. Genesis 1, 26 to 28. And the idea here, again, is there's a breadth of idea here that's encompassed. He's not just talking about our physical form in terms of apex. He's talking about us intellectually. He's talking about us emotionally. He's talking about us with regard to our will and all that constitutes our being. There's just something unique. There's something different about how God has made us. That God and the Godhead is stamped on a person. That we have glory and honor. That there's a great dignity to humanity. So we are his focus, we are the apex, but we're also the stewards of this creation. While we may be the apple of God's eye, and while we may be at the top, if you would, of the heap, we are also a part of the stewardship of this great creation. Verse 6 in chapter 8 says this, you have made him to have dominion, again, a stewardship responsibility over the works of your hands. You have put all things under his feet. We don't worship the creation. We're a steward of the creation. We're called to control. We're called to bring into control and steward the environment and all that there is out there. So there's a value here that God gives us as he focuses and shows us as he focuses on us. And he has given us this apex position and given us the responsibility of stewardship. But also God gives us, if you would, a vision for life. Not only are we valuable, but what is his vision for these very valuable individuals that he has made? What is God's vision? And here, largely, he's speaking from a biological perspective, and this is Psalm 139, if you want to flip over there. It's 554 in the Pew Bible. And a lot of churches probably, if they're doing anything like this or addressing this issue, going to spend some time here. But just in terms of a vision for life, one of the things that we see here in this godly vision for life is this first, from Psalm 139, that life is formed in what we call the womb. That's biology 101. Verse 13, it says, for you formed my inward parts, you covered me in my mother's womb. Some of the versions, we don't all use the same version on Sunday morning. We put up what is in the pews there, the New King James Version. But some of your versions may say something like, you knit together. Use the word knit together. It's the idea of fashioning with care and with purpose. You have knit together us with care and purpose. Every one of us. Whether or not we have something that would be considered a disability, we are all fashioned with purpose and are special. Those who might have been born from tragic circumstance all have purpose and are all created with that dignity, are all sacred, knit together, fashioned with care. It's not appropriate for us as the created, although we are the stewards, to determine what has value, what doesn't, whether it's viable or not. Because he is the one who creates or puts them together, creates this life in the mother's womb. Second, let me suggest this. Life is set apart for his purposes. This life that he allows to create and creates himself has a unique purpose. Psalm 139 says this, it says in verse 14, I will praise you, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Marvelous are your works, and that my soul knows very well. Fearfully and wonderfully made. The idea of being made here is the idea of being set apart. I am fearfully and wonderfully set apart to accomplish what God has for me to accomplish. It's interesting, every now and then, news breaks from the mundane of our dysfunctional world to provide us something that actually is encouraging and allows us to think a little bit better of ourselves than at the moment we do. And I cannot remember the exact situation, but there was a young man with Down syndrome who was being honored for a particular accomplishment. that was unbelievable. And I was just like, praise God for something that is uplifting. To just come out of a news channel. When I was in high school, I had the privilege of working and serving in what was called the Shepherd's Class. It was for children who had learning disabilities, who had Down syndrome. And for years, I kept and had a kind of brotherly, mentoring kind of relationship with a young man who was my age who had Down syndrome. And I had the opportunity to speak at his funeral, and it was perhaps one of the most rewarding relationships I can remember. To just see how he loved and how he served and embraced Christ. One of my most cherished possessions is a card that he and some other individuals from the shepherding ministry in the church where he and his mom attended. And on the back of the cards were made by these very special men and women, were little pictures of them, and all the proceeds from the cards went to support the missions of the church. So if you bought a set, the money went to the missionaries. And I kept that card, and the reason I keep it is just a reminder, certainly, of him. But when you flip it over, his little picture is on the back. And it's just such a blessing to me. It's a blessing to understand that God fearfully and wonderfully made that young man. And that God used a young man that many would see as unable to bring anything to the table, to be an incredible source of encouragement to so many other people. Intentional, intricate. Life is created, and it's created with purpose. He forms it in the womb, and it has a purpose. Let me suggest thirdly, from here, from Psalm 139, that life's development is ordered by God. In verses 15 and 16, at least the first part of 16, says this, "My frame was not hidden from you when I was made in secret, and skillfully wrought in the lowest parts of the earth. Your eyes saw my substance being yet unformed." That idea of it being the depths of the earth is really just kind of a picture for the mom's womb, and it says that God's eyes saw the unformed substance, and it's poetry. It means that he superintended it. It's not just that he saw it, but he saw and he worked with that. That he was a part of it and its development. Number 4, the duration. Our life's duration is established by God. 16, and this goes on the second part of verse 16 there. And in your book, verse 16b, and in your book they all were written, speaking of the days fashioned for me, when I was yet there, when as yet there were none of them. Isn't it amazing to think that before you ever popped out, that God knew each and every day that you would live, and had a purpose for each and every one of those days? That he skillfully knit together the substance of you in your mom's womb, so that you would be just the right person with just the right skills and just the right abilities to do and to bring about what it is that he wanted you to do and to bring about. I don't know how long I have to draw breath. I kind of think back on last week's message where Paul talks about, for me to live is Christ, to die is gain. If God allows me to draw breath today, may I praise him. If today is the last day, or this is the last breath that I breathe, then praise God that I get to be with Christ in heaven. But every one of us, our duration is, the span of our days is established by him. He knows. And it hints of that divine purpose, that there's a plan for everyone, from conception to calling home. And if you would, in some sense, because he says that here, in here particularly, that's why you can't kind of a la carte pro-life. That being pro-life has got to be about more than just being about unborn babies. It has to be about the babies, if you would, that make it, and grow up outside of the womb, you and me. That you and I also have dignity. That you and I also have worth. That you and I are also created in God's image, and therefore we should be protected. That all of us bring something to the table in that sense. So God is the source of life, and He is the one who gives it value, and He is the one who has the vision for what it is and what it should accomplish, its duration of days and its purpose. So where do we go with these things? Where does this take us? And so the second thing I want us to see is that it really takes us to the sanctity or the sacredness of life. That it is holy because it reflects the image of God. And so if you would, let's follow me a little bit on this, with regard to the sanctity idea. And the first is this, is that a person who's pro-life then must believe in the dignity of every human life. You can't piecemeal it, you can't a la carte it. You can't say you're pro-life and not care about other issues that affect the dignity and the image of God that are given to people. You can't say you're pro-life and not care about injustice. You can't say you're pro-life and not care in some measure about issues such as racism. That pro-life involves much more than that. You can't say you're pro-life and not be bothered when people are manipulated and used. Because when we care for all of life, we enhance the dignity of all of life, of everyone's life. And I'm going to let you in on something here that I don't often let out of the bag. But a lot of times when kids go off to college, it's like all of a sudden, that's the place where they what do? They all of a sudden, the wings come out and they try new things. So back in the mid-'80s, when I was in undergrad school, it was during the day when, if you would, the church started to get a little bit more involved in the issue of the unborn. They had finally kind of come to the place of saying, you know what, we really need to do something about this Roe versus Wade thing. And, what are we going to do about this? So on the college campus, there was a group that's organized themselves, and they were going to picket the pregnancy center there in the city. I can do that. So I'm like, I'm going to give that a try. I've never done that before. Been a social activist. So I went a couple Saturdays, and I had my sign, and a lot of people, we were like, why? We were at the front of it, just very respectful. We didn't want to get arrested or anything. Crazy. But we realized that the people knew that there was a back door, so we all of a sudden had to divide our forces and put some of us in the front, some of us were in the back, wanted to cover all the entrances, all of this. It was an interesting experience. Really interesting. But here's something that kind of grew out of it. And I want to use it to illustrate where I'm going this morning, and that's this. Is that the same people who were very willing to wave the flags and hold the posters and engage people in conversation at the pregnancy center had no interest and no idea and no desire to address any other issue that was pro-life, that was also very relevant. I went to school in the South. There are significant racial issues in the South. There are significant racial issues near where I went to school. But that wasn't a thought, because being pro-life was only about the unborn. It wasn't about any of the other areas. And I started to say, what doesn't strike me right about this? Because Scripture teaches me that all of life, wherever it may be at, has dignity and honor and is made in his image. And that if I'm going to be found making a point in one place, I also need to be willing to recognize and perhaps stand up and make a point in any one of these other number of areas that also affect the dignity of who people are and how people see them. Second, let me suggest this, is that human life then is more sacred than the rest of creation. We don't often like to think about this, but I'm just going to come out and say it. My life is more important than a dog life or a cat life. Oh, cats are something. I love cats. But I grew up with all kinds of animals. I grew up with goats and chickens and roosters and bunnies and guinea pigs. And I mean, all kinds. It was like a farm in the middle of the town. Until the rooster started going off too early. And that was when the neighbor said, that's enough of that. You got to fix his clock. But because there is something unique about how God has fashioned us, we need to be willing to recognize and we need to be willing to say that we are more human life, more sacred than the rest. And sometimes we have to be careful about the words that we use and how we describe this. We are stewards of all that God has created, but particularly of that which is the apex, if you would, of human life. When Jesus came and when Jesus died, he did not die. He didn't die for your pet. He didn't die for Fifi. He didn't die for fir trees. He didn't die for forests. He died for you and for me. And while we need to take care of those things and be mindful of those things, our first priority in the way that we deal with how we deal with those things has got to put the human creature, the creation, at the top. Second, third, I want to tie in by way of application with regard to sanctity with this idea that we're called to protect and enrich all life. And I use particularly the word enrich because it ties in with our mission statement as a church, to enrich the community, to enrich life. To take those who are around us and to take where we live the next step in terms of its betterment. And so it's a comprehensive idea to stand for the unborn, but for the powerless, for the disenfranchised and the poor, for those who are struggling with all different kinds of issues. Because that's the nature of biblical Christianity. To get all those different things. Now, the question that I've had to kind of deal with this week is why, in saying these things, why is this so hard? Why is this such a hard thing? And I want to suggest three things, and there's not a place in your notes because I'm trying to work ahead, and so you're just going to have to scribble these on the side. That'll be okay. And there's no blank to fill in, it's just extra. But why is this so hard to kind of have this kind of theology or this kind of perspective on life? And one of the reasons, one of the top reasons that I kind of came back to was, well, sometimes it's hard to really get active about protecting life because we really don't value our own. We don't value our own. When I don't value my own life, why in the world would I care or seek to do anything about helping somebody else's? When I don't see myself as a unique and wonderful and purposed, skillfully made, knit together creation of God, why am I going to go out of my way to see anything happen for anybody else? But when I understand that that's how God made me, and that's how God made them, then I'm more likely to perhaps do something that I might not otherwise do, and I might step up in a fresh way. The second idea is that sometimes I don't think we do anything because we really don't view people or other people through his eyes. His eyes tell me that not only am I valuable, but they are valuable. That I haven't cornered the market on image. I haven't cornered covered the markage on skillfully knit together, but that each and every one of us is purposed. And so when I see them through his eyes, then that's a little bit different. And sometimes it's just hard for us, and this is kind of the third thing, is that sometimes it's hard for us to speak on or act on behalf of another who can't do it for themselves. That sometimes, particularly for those who don't have a voice, it's hard sometimes to do that. That sometimes it's easier for me to speak up for myself than it is to speak up for somebody who doesn't have a voice. Think about the unborn in the womb doesn't have a voice. With all that's going on with young people today in our world, all of the things that are challenging to them that weren't challenges for us, some of them don't have a voice, aren't sure how to be heard, aren't sure how to navigate those issues, and who speaks up for them? Who speaks up for the teens in the midst of drugs and suicide and opioid addictions and those types of things? Who speaks up for the seniors? Many of whom sometimes are just at home, they're not able to get out. Who raises a flag for the dignity and the sacredness of the life of the senior citizen? As much as we've done wonderful things in America for the medical care of individuals, the truth of the matter is that never more than today do people who go to the hospital and who get medical care need someone to go with them and to be an advocate for them. It's just the nature of the way that things are today. And so we can't say that we're pro-life if we would pinpoint focus on one and don't realize the needs of these other areas and these other issues. So what do we do? Let's land the plane here. That's the way we'll do it. So just a couple summary thoughts. These are again, just quickly, but they're kind of see if we can crystallize something here. First thing, let me just be honest. Please understand that we have been created in the image of God. Don't walk away from that. Regardless of how you view yourself or how others have made you feel about yourself, don't lose sight of that. Don't lose connection with that. The idea that my unformed substance gives glory and honor to God. And that I am knit together, I am fearfully and wonderfully made. The second thing here is let's walk away recognizing that every life is a gift. Every life is a gift. Some lives get harder steps than others, but each is a gift. Regardless of its source, it has meaning, importance, and purpose, and destiny, and dignity. Let me suggest this, that to protect life is to give it the opportunity to flourish. When I choose to be pro-life in whatever area I'm choosing to be pro-life in, I'm giving it the opportunity to flourish. I'm giving it nourishment. I'm fertilizing it. I'm giving it something that perhaps it didn't have before, and that is the opportunity for it to sprout and to grow in a way that it didn't before. That life and justice just aren't private concerns. They're not private, they're public. What God's word says here about value and vision, about the source of life and its sanctity, is not just something that I hold on to privately, but it's something that gets lived out in the public sphere. Or as one person I was listening to this week said, the public sphere. I was like, what? What did that person just say? The public sphere. What is that? Trust me, if you start to live out biblical truth and a biblical philosophy of life, you will not just be living in the public sphere, you will become a public sphere. Because much of what you are being called to live out today is not popular. It's not popular. It's not popular today. But it is not simply a private concern. Celebrating the dignity of people is a public concern because they bear the image of God. So today, just some thoughts about celebrating life. I want you to walk out of here today and say, man, I'm glad to be a creation of God. Why? Because I'm fearfully and wonderfully made. I was knit together in my mother's womb. That God has a purpose and a plan for me. He knew my very first day, and He knows my very last day. And if I get to have anything to say about it, every day I live, I'm going to live for Jesus. And when I don't have any more days left on my schedule to live, then you know what? I'm going to enjoy being in Jesus' presence. And part of my calling in life, as I live for Christ, is to celebrate the dignity and the sacredness of each and every life at each and every step. And that my calling is to enrich that, to be a part of growing that, all of